100%.
Well, now that we've established that, you're listening to Dumpster Diving with
Janice, the
and
jerk.
Jane. Yeah, the jerk. I did see a couple of things on Instagram over the yesterday as I'm scrolling through, and it was like these little reels that was like the person with this initial owes you ice cream, and it kept doing J. I was gonna send you every single one of those. Like you owe
Thank
me
you for
all of
not
it. Yeah.
doing that. And by the way, your name starts with J, so maybe you owe yourself that shit. Okay. I'm
I don't
just
have the
putting that.
budget for this shit, so you're gonna buy
Oh,
it for me.
all right.
Okay.
Oh, great. Great, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Welcome.
what?
Mark it
It
with a
sucks to be the
J.
older sister. Hey, we have people listening. Hi,
Oh,
everybody.
hi.
Hey, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. So we're just kind of catching up as we're getting into our conversation today. And I'm finally coming off of my cold and well enough to feel like I can actually have a conversation with you because the fact is I have to be sharp when I'm having conversations with you because otherwise I get all spun up in your BS. So I'm back. I'm healthy. I'm good. It's been a crazy week of travel on my end, so that's a little bit of a blur. But how about you? I hear through the grapevine that you failed a really important test this week. And by the way, as your big sister, I'm embarrassed for all of us. You've embarrassed the family, so thank you for that.
Well,
But I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about it. So what happened? What happened with you?
well, as you said earlier, I didn't study for the test. But
Oh yeah.
actually, I was just following in line with Genevieve, because she
Okay.
started it. She started
So
it.
she failed first.
She failed first,
I
and
love
then
that.
I was really embarrassed, and then I was like, I got this in the bag, and then I failed as well. So
Wow. Being the
I,
second failure, by the way, really even more sad than being the first failure. I just feel like
yeah,
if you're gonna fail, be first.
yeah.
So thanks,
Well,
Jenny.
I didn't have the opportunity. She beat me
Okay.
to it.
All
So,
right. What happened?
well, she is in elementary school. Junior high school.
She's
And
in middle school. How
I
dare
know I
you?
just corrected myself. Jesus.
Wow.
It's all the
Wow.
same building. So to me, it doesn't make a
Okay.
difference. To
That's
her,
actually
it does.
fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Okay. Let's be real. Okay. So I get a letter from my daughter, or no, I'm sorry. This was mailed to the house. I got a letter mailed to the house that Genevieve failed a test. And I was like, whoa, because this is like gold honor roll child, like she's on the gold honor roll.
Ooh.
She failed her vision test with
Ooh.
her glasses on. So I'm guessing that in the 2 years she's had these glasses, her eyesight has severely failed her to the point where she's,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So I was like,
I
okay,
love, by the way, that our school systems are spending money on stamps to
right.
send you that letter in the mail, old
Instead of
school,
giving it to my child to deliver to me,
or
which,
perhaps
yeah.
sending you an email.
Oh,
I
well,
mean,
that would
listen.
have been cool too. But there was a form I had to have the doctor fill out and return to make
Okay.
sure that I
Okay.
was doing my parently duties.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
There's
So
a problem with vision here in
evidently.
California, an epidemic.
Wow. Wow.
Anyways, okay, so I make an appointment for her and myself and Chase. Everybody's getting glasses, everybody's getting their eyes checked, whatever. And I have noticed that my eyes have been definitely changing.
Mhm.
So, we get in there, do all the things, get in there, he tests my right eye. It's, changed a little bit, whatever. He goes to the left eye and he's like, all right, and this is the super obvious one, right? For big block letters. And he was like, all right,
Yeah.
read the smallest line you can. And I said, well, put the letters up and I'll be able to read it. And he's like, aha. He's like, tell me what they are. And I'm like, I see a blank screen. And he whips around and he looks at the wall. He looks at me with this big thing on my face. And he was like, all right, stop joking around. And I was like,
Ah!
I'm serious. There is nothing but a blank. And he was like, hold on. So he like moves a bunch of stuff, blah, blah, blah. All right, how about now? There is just a blank square. And he was like scared. And he goes, are you diabetic? And I'm like, oh my God, no, why?
Oh my God.
And he's like, this isn't good. He was like, this isn't good. And he goes, have you noticed like where you can't see? And I was like, actually, yes. Like parts of the screen will like, I won't see the letters anymore and stuff like that. And he was
Holy
like,
crap.
this is a problem. So he fixes it with, turns the
Yeah,
dial
you
like
adjust it.
times. Yeah. Adjust it
Turns
to
the dial to I'm 100 years old.
right in this die. That's it. like, and he's like, there's a dramatic change in that eye. He's like, okay, so
Wow.
this is now you need to come in for a medical appointment. He was
Oh,
like,
wow.
irregular insurance, you need to get
Yeah.
dilated, you need to do all these things. He goes, because I'm seriously worried about that eye. He goes, there shouldn't be that big of a change. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, fuck. You know,
Yeah.
one, this explains a lot, headaches, everything, and then
Yep.
two, damn it, like, okay, great, all right, well, let's go get
Okay.
old. let's
But
let's
what our listeners want to know most,
mm,
okay,
yeah.
is will you or will you not have to wear an eye patch for the rest of your life?
I will not at this point in time, as far as
Because
I
I
know.
want to start calling you matey, and so I'm gonna need to practice.
Wench would be more appropriate,
Huh.
but I
Which is
mean,
too
maybe
obvious.
too. Yeah,
No, no.
yeah.
We'll work on it.
Wench is way too obvious. You're right.
In all seriousness, um, I hope it's okay. And honestly though, now here's the thing. This could be the first of many. It's not the first. We've talked about others, but hereditary things we have in common because I was it my right eye? I think it was my right eye that I had a cataract in that they've been tracking for years that led to me having, LASIK and
Lens.
cataract surgery and all the things last fall. And every eye doctor I saw kept saying, what happened to you? Like, did you get injured? Did you
Right.
like nobody your age has a cataract? Like, it doesn't make any sense to us. And I was like, well, no, I mean, I've never, not that I can remember, right?
Not that I
So,
stare in the sun or anything like that, like
exactly. So, my point is that, like, if it's cataract, then maybe it's because of our father.
perfect person to blame. He's not here to defend himself.
Exactly. I always like blaming the people who can't defend themselves. So, all right, well, keep us posted
Hmm.
on your eye
Yeah,
journey. On your
I
eye journey.
will.
Okay.
I will. Well,
Okay.
when I show up with an eye patch, I mean, my follow-up's not until mid-April, so, and I'll have new glasses by then and stuff, and I'll be able to see on the regular, but he definitely wants to find out what the hell's going on with my
Yeah, you
eye.
got to figure out what's behind that. That's crazy. Crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
All right.
Hopefully
Well,
something new.
so today, guys, we are today we're actually going to talk about this idea of giving and receiving. I like you just saw us model, giving each other shit and then receiving it, right? Like
Yes,
it's a giving and
yes.
receiving kind of thing. And so the reason it came up because Jane and I were talking about I just had a like a wellness check with my wellness clients that I serve. And one of the women is like she's been just like kicking butt and taking names for like 3 months straight. Has been with me for a couple of years, but finally kind of found her rhythm and her cadence and all the things into everything. Like life is just really great in her space right now, but she was having some reflections. And one of the things she was talking about is how long she avoided like me and our check-ins and getting support from our group, etc. Because she wasn't doing well, right, on the wellness front, and how the worse she did, the more internal she turned, right? So she said something just made me go, oh my God, that's so profound. And it was like, it's crazy how easy it is to turn into ourselves when we're going through times of stress or just duress or whatever, and fold ourselves into that negativity versus opening ourselves up to support and encouragement. And so as I was sharing that with you, Jane, you had this big like epiphany about the coaching piece you do with folks around this idea of
Right.
giving and receiving. So we're like, oh my gosh, this is what we want to talk about because we want to really get into it a little bit because we know, especially again, anybody who's listening, this is going to be true of, but it's heightened for women in general. But very much this idea about like we do tend to do exactly that, right? During times of stress and duress, etc. Even today, when there's such a culture of women supporting women and women lifting each other up, we tend to be the first to, when something goes wrong, turn inwards and not want to stress out the people around us by sharing it. And God forbid, getting some support. So I want to kind of tee us up with that and then just turn to you because I'm super curious about some of the coaching you've done around this and kind of where you see as the starting point for a conversation.
Yeah. No, yeah, I did. I was just like, oh wait, I got stuff on this because it's something that I really coach on all the time. And it comes up in different ways. And I was, as you were kind of, delivering that intro, I was thinking about a way that it actually gets in the way of like personal relationships too. I have a friend that I was actually having a conversation with about behaviors or
Okay.
or or our personal, what we feel is boundaries, but we label it our personal boundaries for ourselves, but it's really a level of protection.
Sure.
And we label it different ways, but the whole giving and receiving aspect is, there's a science to it.
Yeah.
And I had to learn this because I was a poster child for not being able to, receive. It's really hard for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And this actually really changed the way that my mindset was at the time.
Yeah.
When you grow up in an environment, or you are subject to an environment where you're giving all the time and not so much receiving, it's almost like that's how it should be, right?
Yeah.
I'm the
Yep.
one that's of sound mind. I'm the one that's that can get it done. I'm the one that's dedicated enough. So I'm just going to give to the people that are incapable of doing those things, so I can try to help them, right?
Yeah.
But in all actuality, is it really helping them? Sometimes, if they're
Yeah.
willing to receive it.
Yep.
It's a lot of times they're not willing to receive it, so it just falls on deaf ears, and then we get upset because they're not listening, and I gave them the answers, and all these things. But we have to think about it like they're in the same boat that we are.
That's right.
They're in the same freaking boat. So how do they know how to receive that?
Yeah.
Because 9 times out of 10, they don't know how to receive. So now we have this vicious cycle going on of like, I'm always trying to help them. They don't do it, blah, blah, blah. And then that person's trying to help me. And I'm like, they don't know how to take the help. And so it's this vicious cycle, and we turn inward because we think everybody's against us, or they just
Yeah.
don't get it, when in all actuality, we're doing the same thing to each other over and over and over again. So, and how this all started in my brain, and how I started talking about it was, I was working as a coach. I had a friend, a colleague, Kirk. We were like two peas in a pod. He would start singing the song and I would end the verse. Like, we were the annoying people in the office, right? Like, we were
Nice.
silly. We always had fun together. Nothing was ever super crazy, and we needed that from each other. And one day he was like, wow, Jane, you look really great today. That's a cool outfit, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh, this old thing, blah, blah, like, it's cool, all right.
Yeah.
Didn't say thank you, none of that. And he was like, are you serious right now? I'm like, what? And he was like, you can't take a compliment to save your freaking life. And I'm
Uh,
like, what do you mean? And
yeah.
he's like, seriously. He goes, you can't take a compliment to save your life. He goes, I compliment you every freaking day. And all you do is always tell me what the worst part of it is, or you play
Ah.
it down. And
Yep.
he was like, I'm trying to give you a compliment. And he was like, and you're like blocking it.
Right.
And I was like, wow. I go, I never really thought about it that way. He's like, yeah. He goes, how do you think it makes me feel? He goes, you're just swatting down my compliments every day,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so, and I was like, oh my gosh, I never even really thought about that either.
Yeah.
And just that week, my boss had read this new book, to him at that time, and he's like, I want everybody to read it. And it was right on time. It
Oh
was
my
right.
gosh.
And this book is called The Go-Giver, and it's written by Bob Berg and John David Mann. And it's like a self-help business book, it's
Yeah.
professional development, but it applied to life so much that I fell in love with the book. And I'm not a big reader. We've talked about this. It has to be intriguing and capture my ADD brain. Um, and I read the thing very quickly. It's only
Yeah.
160 pages, but there was this special thing in there called the 5 laws of stratospheric success, and we'll talk about that. But
Yeah.
really, the book it's a sales book. It's teaching you how to be like a good salesperson, but really it's about the laws of receptivity.
Ah.
You can give and give and give, but you have to be able to receive at the same time. But this is this cycle that we're all in, is like,
Yeah.
right, we're the givers, we're the servers. Oh, you
Yep.
don't need to give me that. I'll give you the shirt off my back and not
Yep.
ask for any protection or a blanket or
Yep.
anything else, And so this book really just, the way it was laid out, it's a business story. It's about a sales guy, and he goes through this journey, and he meets this this mentor, and he's like teaching him all these lessons. But there's the 5 laws of stratospheric success, which we can cover. But it's a really good book, and it really helped me realize the ripple
Yeah.
effect that not accepting compliments or
Yeah.
receiving does to the other person, that is doing the giving. It blocks their channel of receptivity if they get that
Yeah.
negative response back, and so that's kind of the premise of the whole book, and how to work through it.
It's so interesting, right? Because I think that first off, now I want to go grab it, not just, I mean, for this conversation, but also for, fundamentally what I do in my day job is build relationships with, um, other organizations and, enter into partnerships. And so I'm super curious about the implications on both of those fronts. But as I listening to you talk, and as I was listening to this wellness client talk earlier, the thing that kind of struck me was, again, we tend to do this as women. I love this idea that like we can't we can't excel at giving if we're not also going to be open to receiving. I love the idea that like so you can only do so much without doing the other, and it really feeds into the school of thought that I have around like this idea of wellness, right? Because oftentimes when I'm talking with women about wellness, it's really about, listen, I know your instinct is to take care of all the things and all the people. And imagine how much more you could do that, how much better you could be at that if you were taking care of yourself, right? That if you had clarity of mind, if you had energy, if you had strength, etc. And when you run yourself ragged, so to speak, taking care of everybody else, then you are likely to at some point just collapse. And then what are all those people going to do? And again, it's not to like fuel the idea that you should be taking care of everybody else, but rather meet you in your space. If that's a space you're in, I'm not going to try and talk you out of it. I'm going to say, how can you be better at it, right? And that gets to the core of taking care of yourself. But it made me think about like, okay, why is that, right? Like, what is it about us? How are we wired in that way? And so when I went and did some digging, one of the things that I looked at was this idea of vulnerability, right? I
I
think
was
that,
gonna say that.
right?
Yes, that's
As
like the number
women, we have
one.
a hard time with that. We have a hard time opening ourselves up because it does make us more vulnerable. And frankly, as the female species, gender in this species, by pure evolutionary standards, right? We are, I'm going to use this word, nobody, actually, no, everybody scream at me. That way we get some comments on our post.
Yeah,
We,
please.
we are we are physically weaker, right? Not universally, not every woman is physically weaker than a man, etc. But fundamentally in our design, women typically have to work hard to actually be stronger than men,
Right.
right? We actually have to build that in ourselves. It's not natural. Um, and so I was curious about like, okay, so it makes sense then that if that's the case from an evolutionary standpoint, then the idea of being vulnerable would be even more challenging because we're already vulnerable on some level, right? Just because of evolution. So I went back and I was doing some digging, and one of the things that I found that I thought was really interesting about this idea of vulnerability is how much our childhood experiences impact our capacity to be vulnerable. And so, shocker of all shockers, if you have a childhood where there's lots of trust and a sense of safety, it makes it easier to be vulnerable later, right? Because you trust that people are going to be not take advantage of you if you're vulnerable. Likewise, if you have insecure attachments, if there is no, if there's a lack of trust, if your safety is at risk on a regular, then it's going to make it tougher, right? Obviously, you're
Right.
going to close in on yourself more. So because of our larger conversation that we tend to have, I just thought, oh my God, one more thing, right? That goes back to those childhood experiences.
Well, not only that, but it goes back to primal instinct. If you
Yeah.
really think about it, let's boil it down. We're animals, right?
Yeah.
And before we can communicate and tell each other what's wrong and get the help that we need and everything else, let's go to National Geographic, right?
Right.
There's a herd of wildebeest. There's a injured wildebeest. What do? They leave that wildebeest because they don't want the rest of the crowd to get
Yeah.
attracted by the lions or whoever, right?
Right.
And so that wildebeest will go wander alone, knowing that it's going to get attacked,
Right.
because it's protecting the rest of the herd. We as humans, vulnerability is weakness, right?
Yeah.
We don't want
Yep.
to show that. And so
That's right.
we take it away. Oh no, I'm good. I do this because I just love to, and blah blah blah, or whatever we say.
Yeah.
But most people that give like that need in
Yeah.
return. They
Yeah.
need that. That thank you is their repayment. That
Yep.
whatever it is in their head. And if they show that weakness, that they need something from the other person, that's vulnerability, it's uncomfortableness. They're going to see me as weak. They're not going to see me as this prideful, proud person that knows, got their shit together and everything else. And they're not going to leave me behind if
That's
I
right.
need something from them. I am in that inner circle where I don't need anything. And that's where I think, like ego and
Yeah.
everything else goes. And like, no, 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 I'm in the inner circle. I'm not on that outer circle. This is just it's like a subconscious, level of pecking order that
Yeah.
we go into,
That's
right?
right.
And it's very primal, when it comes down to it. And we don't realize that. We don't stop and think about how primal our actions are and why they
Yeah.
are. We're the only species that understand psychology
Yeah.
and that are smart enough can be intelligent enough to figure this out, to
Yeah.
help each other out. And this, I mean, hello, that's why we do this podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. We finally revealed. That's why. Now everybody knows.
I'm
36, 37 episodes into it. Well, and I think that's tied to this idea of vulnerability, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, so I'll call it out in kind of more overtly, and that is that, kind of tied to all of that is also this fear of rejection, right? Fear of, like, when we say we're struggling, then we
something's
worry
wrong.
that people reject us. We're worried that we'll be seen as weak. We're worried
You're
that the people
inadequate.
who, right, that have come to rely on us will question us, and will question whether or not they should, bring us into their kind of sphere of support, et cetera, et cetera. And we've said it a million times, but we can't overstate it. We do also just have this internal negative voice, right? That's
Right.
there, right? And it is the kind of natural state of things. At least it feels like it's the natural state of things. And so to overshadow it or to shut it down, we have to be really intentional, right? Because we get those, excuse me, those messages from all around us. And so we have to be really intentional. And women are really quick to blame themselves for problems
Right.
rather than looking at external factors that could be contributing to why they are experiencing failure or experiencing, some kind of negative emotional reaction that makes them unable, right, to do all the things that they want to do.
Right. Well, it's that aspect of I come second. I come second because my
Exactly.
kids come first, and
Yep.
most great parents, male or female, have
Yeah.
that thought, like everything's for them. They didn't ask to be here, we're doing this, right? I mean, I had that mentality for a long time, I was just going to do whatever I needed to do
Yeah.
because my kids didn't ask for this crap that we're going through, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that level of pride where I am a single mom and I can do it by myself and all those things. I struggle, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't need anything. I've got everything that I need here. I have a roof over my head, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, things are falling apart,
Right.
but it's somewhat together, and we're
Yeah.
just so programmed to survive in different ways. And again, that deep-seated childhood stuff, in the aspect of needing to survive, we're just going to do what we need to do.
Yep.
And because I have a roof over my head, I should be grateful, right? Because we're
Yes.
always reminded of the things that we should be grateful for as
Oh, yeah.
well, which, yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
should be grateful. Things could be worse, right?
Right.
But if you're always in that mindset, when are you ever going to get out of it?
That's right.
Like you
No,
just
I think that's such a
stuck.
good point. I love that idea of, like, if like getting stuck in the mindset of things can always be worse. And to your point, they can always be worse. That
Yes,
doesn't mean that you should be ashamed of wanting it to be better,
right. And to
right?
grow. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, there's a
So many,
balance of gratitude, being grateful for what you have, yes, but not letting that kind of be the thing that stops you from saying, but I still aspire to this, whatever this is.
right, right.
Yeah.
And maybe even making comments of I'm always growing. Well, when are you going to stop growing? Never.
Exactly.
Like never, never, never.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get into some of the 5 laws of
Oh, yeah.
stratospheric
Let's hear.
success.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about the first one, the law of value. And it says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment.
Ah,
Say that again. Your true worth is determined by how much you give in value than you take in payment. I know so many people that lead by
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Oh my God. Like, oh, but I gave him all this stuff. Yeah, I only charged him, let's just go to this. So, business coaching, this is a prime example of, oh, well, if my prices are cheap, they'll pick me.
oh my gosh, yep,
Okay, yeah, you can be competitive with your pricing, but are you really charging what you're worth?
that's right, yep,
Know that your gut can't tell you that stuff.
yeah,
You actually have to do the math. And I'm actually working with a client right now, small business owner in LA, only has one client. I was like, let me help you expand your client base.
yeah,
If you lose that one client, you're done.
yeah,
He's like, I know. I'm like, okay, let me help you. So we've been working on this, and one of the first things we worked on was his pricing. And he was charging like 40 bucks an hour to have two employees come and do cleaning. It's a cleaning service.
oh my gosh,
I go, how much do you pay them per hour? He goes, $20 a piece. I said, so you're charging exactly what you're paying, but less than, because you're not counting taxes, you're
exactly,
not counting any of that stuff. And are you paying you? And he's like, well, no, I'm not doing the work. I'm like, all right, time out, time out, time
yep,
out, time out. We went from charging $40 an hour to where the way he wants his business to look, it needs to be like $300 per hour.
yeah,
He was like, oh my God. I said,
right,
so what you're giving is much more in value than what you're receiving. you're, you know, you're giving it away.
hmm.
So, and how is that affecting your business? Oh,
Yeah,
it's affecting it in these multitude of ways. Okay. So just by having that conversation, he was like, wait a minute. I go, your whatever you're giving is valuable and it's worth something. You need to
exactly,
charge appropriately. And that's the bare bones.
yeah.
You could ad lib that into anything, but look at
Well,
what.
say it again because when you said it, I actually had an additional thought. So say it to
Okay.
one more time.
So the law of value is your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment.
So the business sense of that makes perfect sense what you just described. But the other thought that I had in terms of what we're talking about too is this idea that, oftentimes we judge our value by how much money we have in the bank, how many things that we have in our life, all the
Right.
stuff, versus what that's suggesting is no, no, it's how you show up to the world is
Mhm.
your determination of value, not the monetary piece of it. So
Right.
there's so many different ways to look at it, right?
Right.
All
Right.
right, I love it.
Exactly.
What's the
So,
second one?
law of compensation. So
Okay.
again, we're going back to that. So your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them.
Okay.
So whatever that compensation is,
Yeah.
right? But if your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them, what are you doing to make that? How do you differentiate from your competition? How are you differentiating from the people around you,
Yeah.
right? How many people are you serving and in what way? And are you just talking to people, or are you
Yeah.
actually changing their trajectory of how they're thinking and how you're giving? I mean, I'm just going to take it all back to biblical times. You teach a man, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish,
Right.
you feed him for life, right?
Right.
So what is it that you're doing, right?
So, and then the non kind of business side of that makes me what I'm thinking about is like one of the struggles that I personally have is and you and I this is true for both of us, right? We tend to be that woman in our world that other people, men and women, but again, lots of women especially turn to for support, emotional support, help in
Right.
times of stress, aid, etc. And there are times where I think to myself, like, I haven't talked with so and so in so long. I wonder if she's okay. But my bandwidth, right? Like my ability to
Right.
actually like check it. And this is just personal stuff, not business oriented, like just personal stuff. And what you're making me think about is like, okay, you really can't be everything to everyone. And
Right.
so if you spread yourself so thin that really all you're doing is, hey, how are you? And saying a few words of platitude and that's the best you've got because I don't like it. This isn't a question to be answered right now, but it makes me wonder, like on one hand, I can't possibly like not pick up the phone or not respond to a text or not whatever. But on the other hand, yeah, like when you're that person constantly in people's worlds, and by the way, I am deeply grateful for that role, and I appreciate the fact that I have a skill set and a persona that draws people in that way. But at some point, it's like, am I even helping people if it's so superficial because I can't possibly commit the time, right, to help people in a more deep way? Anyway,
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother,
yeah,
side of the perspective of it, and you're
yeah,
100% correct. Like, is the attention that I'm giving this person, the value that I'm giving them, is it at full value, or am I just like here
yeah,
going through the motions? Because I'm gonna be honest, there's days
yeah,
where I'm just going through the motions.
yeah. I think
I
that's true
mean,
for all of us.
yeah, yeah. I'm just going through the motions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm glazing over and I'm probably thinking about something else, but those are the times where you need to really think,
Yep.
this is my boundary. Like, I can tell I'm drifting. I'm not
Yep.
giving them the 100% that I normally would. This is going to be a change in my character. And, so you got
Yeah.
to think about those things. And that's when you go and you say, I really want to be there for you, but this
Yeah.
particular time in my life, like this very moment, is I'm not here. So
Yeah.
can we sit down in a couple of days? Let me like
Yeah.
get through this, or just be honest. Like, shit.
And
Just be
that's
honest.
hard, right? Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's hard.
that's vulnerable.
When somebody needs you, it is really hard to not be honest or
Right.
to be honest rather and say, I can't, like I don't have it. I just don't have it right now,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, that's and it's funny because here's a really quick example, but this is an example of when I was honest, right? Like this past week I was traveling, so I was in the DC, Virginia area from Friday a week ago until when did I fly home? I flew home Tuesday night, only to turn back around and be at the airport at 7 a.m. on Wednesday to go to Nevada and be there for the rest of the week. And so Joe picked me up Tuesday night from the airport, God bless him. And he like immediately started like telling me about all the stuff he has going on at work and
Oh
he's
my
just like
God.
going and going and going. He was so sweet because he finally like and I am, more than anything, I was sick. Like I was in the middle of this cold and it was just kicking my ass. And I was like, it's all I can do to like be awake right now. And at one point, he finally like looked over at me in the car and he kind of puts his hand on my leg and he was like, "Okay, babe, how are you?" Right? Like he really
Oh, he got it.
like, "How are you?" And I was like, he's like, "You were just in like some crazy meetings and I know it was tense and intense and all the things like, how did it all go, Boa?" And I was like, "Oh my God, thank you for asking. And because you asked, I can tell you, I can't even talk about it right now. Like I don't have it in me
Right.
talk about it. So ask me again in like 2 days." And so when I got back from Nevada and was starting to come out of this cold a little bit, that's when I could be like, oh, and then yes, when I was in DC on Monday, blah, 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 blah. But in that moment,
Right.
right, he created a space for me to be able to say, I literally can't even talk about it right now.
But that's perfect. And he took your social
Yeah,
cue.
he
You didn't
did.
say
He
shit.
did.
You just sat
Yep.
there and he was like,
Yeah.
oh, hold on. There's
Okay, hold
silence.
on a second. But honestly, in that case, and then let's go on to number 3. We both kind of got what we needed because he just needed to say stuff out loud because I had been
Right.
gone for 5 days. He didn't even need me to like
He just,
respond or probe. And
yeah.
and so and then likewise he could be okay with me like being like, okay, I can't. And he was good. Like, all
Yeah.
right.
Well, he exerted the energy that had been pent up for a couple of days without you
Exactly.
around.
Exactly.
I love Joe and his stories and stuff like that. He was ready. He was
He was
ready.
ready. He had it,
All
man.
right. So number 3, the law of influence.
Okay.
So your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first.
Interesting. Okay.
So your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first.
Okay.
Of
See, now
influence.
that's interesting because I want to hear you talk about it, obviously, from the business perspective, but from a social perspective, think about the way we use the word influencer now.
Right. We
And
are
I guess
influencing
on some
motherfuckers.
level, right, when you look at influencers, even though in most cases they're trying to sell you something or get you to think a certain way, i.e., influencer, it is through tapping into what they think you need and then
Right.
giving you that.
But
So
let's
yeah,
think about that.
but
Let's think about
let's think
that
about it
for
is
a
ringing like a
moment.
okay.
Is it really the interest of the influencer or the audience? Ah, so the
Ah.
influencer is paying more attention to what the audience wants. How more influential do you think you'll be?
Exactly.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah,
ding. It's not
exactly.
about you, motherfuckers. It's
Right.
about the person that you're working with, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about their agenda. And this is a
Yeah.
total coaching thing, right? We
Oh
don't have the
yeah.
answers. I don't know what's best for you, Janice,
Nope.
but you do. And if I talk about the things that interest you and all those
Right.
things, then we'll get somewhere that's actually
Yeah.
going to make you make some movement versus what I feel that you need.
Exactly. So you're kind of like leading, it's like you're leading me to reveal what I know, but I don't realize I know.
Yes, yes. It's all
Confusing,
your
like
idea.
manipulate. It's manipulation is what it is.
It's getting you to see your own shit. I mean, come on.
Okay, whatever. But anyway, that's cool. That's interesting, right? To think about both sides of that. And so yeah, all right, we got to ponder that a little bit more. All right, what's number 4?
All right, number 4, the law of authenticity. The most valuable gift you have to offer is
Mm,
yourself.
a freaking men,
That's it. You
right?
don't have to be a certain way. You don't people want to know people that are different, that
Yeah,
aren't like
that's right.
everybody else. Prime
Yeah.
example. I am not your average run-of-the-mill woman. I have per, whatever fucking hair, teal, tattoos everywhere. I wear funky clothes sometimes, most of the time, stuff like that. And Wednesday night we had, I'm part of a women's networking group, and we had one of our monthly meetups. And I knew no one except for like 2 people.
Yeah.
And those 2 people, one I know very well, and the other person I saw at the last meetup 2 months ago when the last time I went.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of socially awkward when it comes to stuff like that. When it comes to me not knowing somebody,
It's shocking.
I know, I'm not the person that's in your face, like, oh my God, I'm Jane. Nice to meet you. Blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not that person. I'm the observer. You have to remember, I survived my childhood. So I would sit
Amen.
back, I would watch, I observe, I see body language, I hear conversations that I don't want to be a part of, and then conversations that, okay, I could get into that,
Yeah.
whatever. But my mode normally, and this goes all the way to the birthday horoscope book that I have.
Yeah.
My birthday is the birthday of the standout, the person that
Right.
doesn't want to be in the spotlight, but is automatically drug into it every
Yes.
single time.
Yep.
I sit at a table by myself. There's 7 other chairs. Within 2 minutes, they were full. Minutes. I wasn't even making eye contact with anybody. And
Right.
this one lady comes over, Hillary, and I met her at the last party, but she didn't remember meeting me. She introduced herself to me, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm Jane, I met you last time. She's like, oh my God, I forgot. She's like, yeah. She goes, I looked over because I was like, what brought you over here? And
Yeah.
all their little cronies. Like, it was weird. They all migrated over. She's like, you just looked like a rock. Like, I just needed to go talk to you. And I was like,
Ah,
okay.
interesting.
So I'm the anchor
Yep.
of the situation. Okay. She
Yeah.
goes, it just felt safe. It just felt like we could go over there and be ourselves. We could be authentic. You're authentic. Let's go. And I had
I
my
love it.
hair like this, but I
Yeah.
wrapped it in a way that I had a big bow. My hair was in a
Okay.
big bow on top of my
Yeah.
head. And she's like, and I saw the fucking bow. And I was like, I
Love
have
it.
to come over here and talk to you.
Yep.
None of those were things were done intentionally to get attention, but
Are
they
you
get attention.
sure? Let's dig into that. When you were making that bow, no, not
I
even a
mean,
little.
well, it was really fucking cute.
You're like in the mirror going, I fucking dare you not to come
No,
over.
I don't even need a mirror. That's how I do these bows. And they were like, how did you do that? And I'm like, oh, hold
Yeah.
on. I start taking my hair down. They're like, no, 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 you're going to ruin it. I'm like, watch me. 30 seconds later, I had another bow. They were like, that's amazing.
Oh my God, that's
I hair
hilarious.
wowed them.
I love it.
So, but
Did you hear? Hold on, hold on. Let's go back to that. I want our listeners to be very clear that hair wowing is a thing. You heard it here first. It's going to be trademarked, so don't try and steal it. Hair wow. It's a thing. Oh my God. That's a whole different YouTube channel.
hashtag hair wow.
Hashtag how to hair wow. Anywho, but yes, I love that. But I love that, like, just you have this aura, back to your 4th rule, of authenticity, right? And I do think that, like, again, it ties into what we were talking about earlier, because I think that part of the way that we can shift, right, from being these people who are only giving and never receiving
Right.
is by normalizing, right? Normalizing
Right.
the idea of being vulnerable, normalizing it, and identifying it as a strength versus a weakness, right? Turning the narrative a little bit away. I was on a work call on Friday, and we have these like monthly morning chats and one of my colleagues brings in like somebody who's not from our industry, right, to just introduce us to different thinking. And the woman was talking about this idea of narrative, right, and the power of narrative right now. And so
So
this idea
powerful.
of like how we shift the narrative will be whatever we say it's going to be, but if we're not committed to it and we don't keep reiterating it, then just like a lot of things, right, we fall back into old patterns. And
Right.
so I love this idea of like using authenticity, right, showing up as your authentic self as a way to shift the narrative and saying, yeah, like you said, like today I can't give you everything, right? Because I don't have it to give. That's where I am from an authentic standpoint. But let's chat again in 3 days or call me again next week or, what, or call our joint friend so and so because she might have it to give right now and I don't. And if you need it right now, then, right? Like, so anyway, reframing it, right? And kind of reframing that narrative, I think could be a really important part. All right. What's number 5?
All right, number 5, the law of receptivity.
Ah,
The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving.
yeah.
And it's a full circle, right?
Yeah.
And I was having a chat with one of my very good friends, and we were talking about like relationships and our current mindsets on relationships, right? And she
Yeah.
and I are kind of in the same spot where we're just like, we don't need a relationship.
Yeah.
We don't, and we don't want that other person to have to answer to like, where are you, and checking in and blah blah blah. But the companionship is what we
Yeah.
miss,
Yeah.
and she was like, but that's my superpower. And she was like, and I don't want to give it up because what if I get hurt again and blah blah blah. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I get that, but at the same time, you're leaving yourself, you're not allowing yourself that vulnerability that you need to
Yeah.
learn that not everybody's like that,
Yeah.
and B, like that, yeah, that's a boundary for yourself. You're not going to cross it. So you're never going to have a relationship or open yourself up to any type of companionship or anything else ever again because
Yeah.
you don't want this one thing to happen. How does that make sense?
Exactly.
How does that make sense? Like you have to have that hope and that aspect of, I need to be vulnerable to figure out what's best for me.
Yeah.
If I don't open myself up to that and be authentic in the aspect of, yeah, I need to be strong and I need to be all these things, but you have this tough exterior, but you also have to have that gushy part to be able to balance yourself out, right?
Yeah.
And so we were just talking about that, but that's this also because she's also a big giver. Like she's
Okay.
there for people, support,
Yep.
security, all of those things, but don't give it to me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Yep.
Why?
It's true. It's true. And we do, it's our default, right? And again, a really superficial way of thinking about that is, and I think I've said this, told this story before, like, even when we have house guests, right? And we have people over for get-togethers or whatever. And it was my cousin several years ago who had come to stay with us for the holidays and was like, "Hey, you want me to do the dishes? Hey," and every time I'd be like, "No, no, no, you relax. No, 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 I got it." And he finally looked at me and he was like, "You understand that when you let people help, you're demonstrating value for them." And it's
Right.
the same idea, right? That when we
Yes.
always are on the giver side and never on the receiver. And by the way, I really value that we're using the word receiving because I think that the word taking, which is a
Yes.
synonym we usually use, has that negative thing built into it,
That
right?
give
And
and
so
take.
moving
Yeah, that
away
give
from
and
that.
take. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was really for me a moment for me to go, oh my gosh, I never thought about that because my intention is really pure. My intention is like, no,
Yeah.
I want you to relax. I want you to have fun. I don't want you to worry. And it didn't occur to me for a second that I was, you know, uh, low key, possibly giving off the message of no, 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 you don't have value. You don't need me.
That's
So
yeah.
yeah,
That's the
so
exact
important.
point that my friend made about me not receiving compliments.
Yes.
They
Yes.
batten down his value, and
Yep.
it makes them feel like you don't value that relationship that you have with them.
Exactly.
And back to the relationship aspect is, this person is one of my best friends and one of the people that I can call bawling my eyes out and not
Yeah.
and be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And they love that I'm vulnerable with them, but
Yeah.
they can't be like they told me, oh, well, the other day, I was feeling really bad and stuff like that. And my mom and my sister, I can't talk to when I'm feeling like that because I get the most vulnerable with you guys.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, but that's what you need to do.
That's right. That's right.
But
But it is
that's the whole
hard.
point.
Ooh, because we're scared of it, right? Like we're
Yeah.
scared it's kind of almost like being scared of the unknown, right? We're
Right.
scared of like, if
Right.
I'm that open, what can, and it's not about me
Who am
not
I
trusting
letting in?
you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what I might find if I'm that open, right? Like,
Right.
I'm scared of what I might find. So, and I
Right.
think,
Well, and I think too is like their last relationship, the person, they were vulnerable, what they feel
yeah,
like their vulnerable level was with that person, and they
yeah,
took great advantage of it, but they weren't receiving anything from that person.
yep,
So it's like it's different. It's like it's not even the same compare it's apples and oranges.
exactly. Exactly. And I
So
think
and
that
that's
that's
where
why
our brain goes, is like we need
that's
to
where our
be,
brain goes.
yeah.
And I think it's why these conversations are so important, right? And it's my hope that like people who are listening are like connecting on some of the pieces and being able to like see yourselves in it, right? And then kind of take some action as a result of something, right? Not every single thing is going to resonate with you, but something is going to make you see yourself. And I will say, like, I was thinking about like kind of getting to kind of final thoughts here, right? And one of the strategies, if you will, that I think that we can use to help foster this in each other is celebrating it when we see it, right? So when we see somebody being their authentic selves, like the people who gravitated toward you the other night and being able to say it that way, that's celebrating you
Yeah.
showing up your authentic self. And so
Mhm.
celebrating in others, but also like being really honest about where our mindset is, because as much as we're sitting here talking about how we really need to build this up, especially in other women, but in other people in general. And we need to foster it. And we need to stop thinking about, when we're putting our real selves out there, or showing a weakness that we see it as a weakness or what have you, or that it's a negative thing to have a weakness, right? We all have them. But
Right.
there are times like I mean, if I'm not if since I'm always trying to be really honest, um, there are definitely times where I will look at someone and be like, "Oh my god, suck it the fuck up." Like,
Right.
because I feel like there are also those people in our world who it's almost okay, this is just being super authentic, right? It's almost like overboard, the opposite end of the spectrum.
It's
And
a
so
crutch.
then I
Yeah.
find myself wondering, like, are you doing that on purpose for attention? Are you which is horrible because maybe they are, but maybe they're not, right?
Right.
And so maybe they've
They're
actually
stuck.
mastered,
Uh-huh.
yeah, maybe, or they've mastered the ability to like put it all out there all the time. And that makes me super uncomfortable because it's like, okay, I can't just be like a wallowing puddle of self-pity either, right? Like,
Right.
where is the kind of
Balance.
balance where
Mhm.
you show up as your authentic self, um, but aren't wallowing in a puddle of self-pity, right? So,
Right.
and I don't know the answer to that, by the way. That's why I'm giving it as a final thought, so I can be like good luck with that, everybody. But more of just like a, in
Ah!
all honesty,
You
right? Like
sorry stats out there. Good
that's
luck.
right. Sorry, stops. But that's another space you might see yourself in, right? You might see yourself as that person. So how do you, if that's the space that you're in, how do you start to create some balance where you can see beyond the things that are hard and recognize in yourself the things that you're capable of to help start kind of changing that, shifting that, And I know that's really vague, but it's coming out as messy as it is in my head. So you're welcome.
Right. Well, I chalk that up to being in the aspect of self-awareness.
Yeah.
There's a lot of aspects, we've also talked about the tool I use, the energy leadership index,
Yes.
like what energy do you resonate in? There's people where it's the aspect of they're just stuck in that mindset. And
Yep.
so with them expressing where they're at, that's our opportunity as authentic, people that are giving and receiving and all of those things, to be honest with them. Wow, it
Yeah.
really sounds like you're stuck in this mindset, or it really sounds like, is it really that bad?
Right.
You know, how does this affect you? Open asking those open-ended questions where they actually had to think about their answer and not just say yes or no, to get them to see, hmm, or hear themselves say something.
Yeah.
Because somebody told me that the other day. They were like, just sitting with you and the way that you ask me questions, I'm able to process my thoughts by talking to you.
Yeah.
And you don't ask me questions that you already know the answer to. You really make me think about it. And I go, well,
Yeah.
that's my job. That's professional development, without sitting you down and going, here, you need this workshop.
Here's the thing to learn.
Yeah,
Exactly.
here's the thing to learn. Where are you coming from? What did you feel? How did how did you overcome that? What did
Yep.
you learn from it? What are you changing now? What came up for you during that time?
Yep.
Thoughts, feelings, actions. Because the big disservice that we do to each other is tell each other how we should feel.
That's right. That's so true. Yep. I love that. I think that's a great place to end. The big disservice we do to each other is telling each other how we should feel. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap it up. So, our intention today was really to just kind of delve into this idea. And I love that we were able to do it like with those five rules or five ideas
Yeah,
and
and
like
we'll put them on the
thinking
thing.
about them. Yeah, thinking about them from a business, but also a very personal perspective. And again, this all started with like some conversations we've had with other folks in our lives where it's like it's so hard for us to it's much easier to close in than it is to open up. And I just feel like, if you take nothing away from this episode, take away the reflection point of where am I on that spectrum? And if I
Right,
am closed in, what's one little thing that I heard from today that I could use as a beginning to start opening up, right? Knowing that on the other end of opening up is support and encouragement and all the things, right? That we need to be our best selves.
right. And
We
just
show up in the
knowing
world.
that, allowing the people in your life that offer that support the grace and the room to not be available when they don't feel they're available.
Amen.
And that's not
Yep.
a weakness, and you don't go, "Oh, they failed me because they weren't
Yep.
there that one time." Everybody needs that reset time, and I'm one of those. Like I definitely value, especially now that I'm in like my 40s, like not that I'm old and decrepit by any means. I really enjoy sleep and relaxation at
Yeah.
this point in my life. It's
Yeah.
weird. I never did
Exactly.
before.
What the heck? I know.
I
Yeah.
know. And
Exactly.
I'm just like, you know what? Like, I kind of like this because I'm allowing myself the space and time to think and
Yeah.
to be in my own thoughts and to connect with nature and do all the things that, the old phrase of like, stop and smell the roses. I
Yeah.
believe in that shit,
Yeah.
like if you don't stop and just take a look at your surroundings and how is it affecting you and how do you feel and what are all the feelers going on, you
Yep.
know, how do you know what's best for you? How do so it's all about slowing down and really looking at how you're giving and how you're receiving and what you're
Well,
receiving.
and yeah, and you made me think of one last thing, and that is that, in the drive that I had to make this week in Nevada, there's like I'm driving to a school district that's like 3.5 hours north of Vegas, right? So fly into Vegas, get in a car, drive. There are literally 100-mile stretches of that drive with nothing, like
Nothing.
nothing, right? And that includes no signal. And
Yeah.
so I spent a lot of time this week with silence, right? Because I could have like played an audiobook that I have downloaded on my phone or whatever, but I chose silence. And I got to tell you, there's something really cathartic about that.
Yeah.
Like of not having any stimuli at all, except what I was driving
Amen.
through was desert and mountains and, whatever. So I love the idea of like taking some time to really give or yourself a chance in the ways that you just described in the example I just offered, to do exactly that. So, all right, you guys, couple of things for you to know. First off, obviously this episode you can watch on YouTube if you're listening right now. If you're watching on YouTube and you want to listen again, you can do that too, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe and do all the things. And as a little bit of a teaser, not to get ahead of ourselves, I didn't ask you if we should say this or not, but I'm going to say it.
Just
And
goes
then you can.
going rogue. Be
I was going to
authentic.
say that you can edit it out, but we don't edit, so
We don't
we're not
edit
gonna do
shit.
that.
I'm not doing that. Say what you got to say, girl.
But we are part of what Jane and I are thinking about is how we create additional opportunities outside of the podcast to share some of this learning and share some of this expertise, et cetera. And so what we're putting together now is a series of workshops that we feel like would be really, really incredible opportunities for us to share with a variety of different audiences. It could be audiences of parents, audience of women in leadership, audiences of young women, especially all the different things. So as you think about all the episodes and all the things that we've talked about, if there's something in particular you think would be of high value for us to hone in on in a setting like that, we would love to hear from you. So in the notes of this
Yeah.
episode is our email address. Send us a quick email and say, oh my God, you guys should design something around blank, right? And obviously, if you are in a space where you would like something like that, right? You have that's something that would be of value for you and your group, let us know because we'd love to chat with you about it. That's just a little teaser because we're just now starting to do it. We're just now starting to design it. So we don't want to go crazy. But yeah, we're excited about it.
Yeah. No, it's going to be awesome. And, And like Janice said, like anything that we've talked about, even just barely touched on, and you want to hear our opinion on it, or you heard something and we haven't talked about it, and you want to know what our opinion is, and you want us to do a show or a workshop or whatever, tell us. We're
We
about
want
it.
to hear it. Exactly. That's us being open to your input. You're welcome. There we go. All right, you guys. Thanks. You're the best. Peace out.
Bye.